W1120 AM and W275CM FM. Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
Congress is poised to pass a bill to keep AM radio in cars, but time is running out. 82 million Americans risk losing the news, sports, talk, traffic, and vital emergency information they rely on. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress to pass this bill now.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to STOP.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Discover the fish and farm market at the Boston Fish Pier. Open every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Boston Seaport. From fresh seafood to juicy tomatoes and sweet corn to grab-and-go options, indulge in the peak of summer's bounty. Support local farmers and enjoy the freshest ingredients all summer long. Sponsored by Mass Farmers Markets, a nonprofit dedicated to championing farmers markets across Massachusetts. Find a market near you at massfarmersmarkets.org.
This is Tucker Silva with the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with your Financial Exchange quick tip of the day. And today we're talking about how Medicaid irrevocable trusts operate. Todd, many people are afraid that if they transfer money to an irrevocable trust, they will be giving up control of their assets and will have to ask their trustee for permission to spend their own money. Now, is this a valid concern?
No, it's really not. And folks, when you think about irrevocable trust, please remember that there are many different kinds of irrevocable trust. There are some that require a loss of control, rigidity, inflexibility. However, the trust we're talking about when you're protecting assets from a nursing home allow the donor to remove and replace the trustee, allow the donor to have really an unbelievable amount of control over the assets that are in the trust. They can live in their house, they can manage and invest their own money, they can sell a house, they can buy a new house. When the money's invested, they can have the income come directly to them. Folks, the control you keep over your assets in an irrevocable trust is really something you must try to learn about. And that's why we're giving you away a guide today to help you understand these trusts.
Request this brand new guide from the folks at Cushing & Dolan at 866-848-5699. It's called Unlocking the Power of Medicaid Irrevocable Trusts. Cushing & Dolan have been helping families like yours for more than 30 years, and find out if they can help yours too. 866-848-5699, or you can request it from LegalExchangeShow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
We are the Debt Destroyer Network. Any debt you have, credit card, tax, student loan debt, call now for free information that helps you destroy your debt. It's great advice. Plus, when you make this free call now, we have Debt Destroyer experts ready to help. They can show you how to destroy your debt and get your life back on track. Debt problems don't have to be overwhelming. You can live stress-free and debt-free. Credit cards, medical bills, IRS tax problems, even student loan debt. Learn about free programs offered by the credit card companies, hospitals, and even the government that can help slash your debt. Call the Debt Destroyer now for free information. Call now. 800-430-8804. 800-430-8804. 800-430-8804. Again, that's 800-430-8804.
This Veterans Day weekend, help honor all who have served this country. Join us on Saturday, November 9th for the 9th Annual Disabled American Veterans 5K Boston. It's a run and walk to support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. Register now at dav5k.boston.
For 40 years, Cancer Support Community has been a relentless ally for anyone impacted by cancer, with free services provided online and in person, with their newest location in Massachusetts. Connect with Cancer Support Community Massachusetts for free emotional support, educational resources, patient navigation, financial counseling, and more. 617-797-3391. CancerSupportMass.org. CancerSupportMass.org.
The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts. Do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Marc Fandetti. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting DAV5K.Boston and making a donation today. The DAV 5K Boston is presented by Veterans Development Corporation. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Marc Fandetti.
Chuck, Marc, and Tucker with you here. We continue to, we got the wagons heading west towards Jackson Hole. It's going to take us all week to get there, but we are broadcasting live from the Oregon Trail as we make our way out to see Jay Powell. We're actually not broadcasting from the Oregon Trail. Jackson Hole isn't really even on the Oregon Trail. It's a little bit north of where it passes through there. But in any case, Marc, all eyes are focused on the Fed this week, mostly because, quite honestly, there's not much else of much interest this week in terms of either economic data or earnings. But we did get an earnings report this morning from Target that follows Walmart in painting a stronger picture of consumer spending than maybe we thought we had a couple weeks ago. Your thoughts on what we're seeing there?
I always wonder how much you can generalize from this stuff, because Target's results, it seems to me, I'm not a consumer discretionary stock analyst, but my sort of armchair reading of it is that measures that they took to increase foot traffic, including very publicly asserting that they want to lower prices and doing so conspicuously, they seem to have worked. But average spending didn't go up, although, year over year, I guess results were fine for existing stores. So overall, would you call this report? I'll finish the thought. But am I safe in calling this an okay report?
Yeah, I think that it's quite fine. I mean, look, investors think it's better than fine. The stock's up 13% after the report.
Bracing for the worst, maybe.
The big reason why they raised their guidance. They're not talking down their guidance and saying, hey, we've got, we're not going to be as profitable as we thought. Instead, it's, no, we can actually raise our profit guidance for the rest of the fiscal year. And that's not something that you typically see retailers doing immediately on the eve of recession. It's just not what you would typically see. Now, Marc, I have a question for you, and I don't know if you have any of this offhand or not, because this is literally the first time I've mentioned it to you.
Great.
Is there? I know.
No, I welcome this. Go.
This is the beauty of a live show is, we just get to throw things at each other and see what happens. Sometimes it's beautiful, Is there any type of correlation between what we see from retail sales and GDP as a whole?
I would assume so, because retail sales and spending are obviously highly correlated. They tend to move together, and spending is, in an accounting sense, the vast majority, about 70% of GDP. So I haven't looked at that in particular. I don't think. Maybe I have at some point, but a priori, as they like to say, I would suspect that would be the case.
So, in my opinion, even though there still are some other weak spots, I mean, housing earlier this year looked like it was ready to be a nice little growth engine, and since it's stalled out and now is creating some drag. But the last month or two, the retail data has started to look better. And so it's tough to look at that picture and say, yeah, there's a real problem that's developing here. So I think that any time that you are talking about, hey, there's going to be a recession, happening, right now or in the next couple months, you have to say, okay, what are, 4 or 5 data points that we can point to and say these are evidence that recession is coming. And a month ago, there were a few where you could say, yeah, these are things we need to watch. The employment picture was one. Housing was another. Retail sales, consumer spending was another one. We haven't really seen any weakness on the industrial production side, correct, Mark?
Yeah, the typical measures there, industrial production, capacity utilization that the Fed produces monthly are, I'll just sum them up by saying fine.
So you had a few that were out there in the last couple of weeks now, and again, it's not enough to put the recession talk to bed. I do want to emphasize that, hey, if things can start to look better in a couple of weeks, they can also start to look worse. But the employment picture looks different now than it did a couple weeks ago because weekly jobless claims have improved meaningfully over that time period. Again, it doesn't mean that everything's fine just because you get a couple weeks of good jobless claims, but things look better there. And we've gotten a retail sales report for the month of July, plus quarterly earnings for Walmart and Target that both were better than expected. And so now you have, okay, we've got housing that's lagging, and employment still has some work to do, but that's not enough to say, yeah, there's a recession that's either coming or happening imminently, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, you never really know. Sometimes recessions are the result of changes within the economy and within the business cycle. Sometimes they're a result of outside forces or shocks. So the latter are not foreseeable almost by definition. That's why we call them shocks. You could just call them surprises too. Growth ebbs and flows even during expansion. Sometimes it slows down to the point where it looks like we're going to lose the patient. The pulse gets really faint, and then it picks back up again. And the proximate cause might not be easily identified. So I don't want to say we're in the clear. I'm not in the business of doing short-term, economic forecasts. Nobody should be, arguably. But, yeah, there's no evidence, Chuck, I think is what you're saying, of an immediate, say, cause of a broad downturn that typically meets the definition of recession.
I think we're at a point now where more data is needed in either direction to prove either things are fine or no, we actually are heading towards recession. It's just not now. It might be a few months later.
I mean, arguably, you're always heading toward recession. I think some would disagree.
Well, that's like saying that ultimately, Mark, we're all dead.
We're all gonna die.
Like, listen, I get it.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. I don't like
all
it.
Economies,
I like the analogy.
All matter tends towards entropy. All people tend towards death, and all economies tend towards recession. Right? That's where we're going?
I think some researchers would disagree. They don't think recessions are inevitable. Someone famously said 25 or so years ago, recessions don't occur, or I think what they said was expansions don't die of natural causes. There's a culprit. There's a murderer. That murderer is the Fed. I'm not sure I agree with that for what my 2 cents is worth. So not everybody agrees that recessions are inevitable, but I think the vast majority of economists who specialize in this area would say, well, it's self-evident that they are because they happen despite our best efforts. But that doesn't mean that some people won't try to temper the business cycle or to prevent recessions altogether. I'm not sure that you can.
So that's what we have in terms of kind of where the economic data is stacking up at the moment. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, there have been some headlines that are perturbing me, I think is the nice way of putting it, specifically regarding these revisions that are going to be happening towards the jobs numbers for the last 12 months. So we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to discuss whether or not 1 million jobs are suddenly going to vanish as a result of Bureau of Labor Statistics revisions that are happening. We're supposed to happen 15 minutes ago, but for some reason have not yet been published. But we'll talk about what exactly is going on here and why it does or does not matter to the health of the U.S. economy. That's coming up right after this.
Get up-to-the-minute market updates with Wall Street Watch, weekdays at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Recent reports suggest that a record 4.1 million Americans may retire this year alone. Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and if you're one of them, you'll want to have a retirement plan in place that focuses on several objectives. When to actually retire is a very important one to consider. Retiring early while giving you more time to enjoy life after work also means you'll need your money to last longer. Retiring later may not give you as much time to enjoy life's pleasures, but you'll have more time to save money. It's important for your retirement plan to strike a reasonable balance, and our new guide may help. It's called A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and it's yours free by calling 800-393-4001. The guide discusses these issues and more, so please call 800-393-4001. Once again, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Last year, we introduced you to Marc, CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Marc is a career military man, and we're proud to have him back as the presenting sponsor of the 2024 DAV 5K Boston.
I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18 and served proudly from 1981 to 1984. As CEO of Veterans Development Corporation, my goal is to give back to the veteran community, many of whom are employees of this company. This is one of the reasons I am so excited to be partnering with the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts on this year's DAV 5K Boston. The DAV works tirelessly to support many of our disabled veterans and provide them access to critical services that help them live comfortably every day. I hope to be part of many more success stories of our vets being able to achieve their goals and dreams when their service ends.
Veterans Development Corporation is proud to be the presenting sponsor of this year's DAV 5K, taking place on Saturday, November 9th at Fort Independence in South Boston. To register for this year's race, visit dav5k.boston.
Summer in New England is spectacular. Winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are three of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com, where you'll find all the information you need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com. Elder life planning can be overwhelming, so make sure you're prepared, or you could make costly mistakes that affect your overall plan. Irrevocable trusts are the most common type of trust that folks use for financial protection, and while they can be complicated to create, they help keep your assets safe because they contain specific protections that many of us need, like the possibility of eliminating your estate taxes. Cushing & Dolan are experts in elder law and taxation, and they can devise a plan that covers you in every area where issues can arise. Their new guide is called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. Learn more about how these trusts can benefit your family by calling 866-848-5699 right now. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide right now by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Miss any of the show? The Financial Exchange Show podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This segment of the Financial Exchange is brought to you in part by the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Tourism. The U.S. Virgin Islands are St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. Enjoy perfect weather, world-class dining, incredible beaches, and a vibrant nightlife. Head to visitusvi.com and book your trip today. No passport is needed, and there's no money to exchange. Take your next vacation in America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. Go to visitusvi.com to book your trip. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark, so there's pieces all over the internet talking about how the Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to be revising jobs numbers for the last year, with 1 million jobs potentially being revised downward and those jobs not being added. Is this something that's really nefarious or just really boring, actually?
Well, when you and Mike, as you are here most of the time, report on U.S. government economic releases, you call them statistics. You call them that for a reason. The word statistic refers to the fact that it's an estimate of an underlying value that we don't know for sure. When we say 100 and what was it, 14,000? I just looked at it yesterday, so it should be
114,000.
Okay, so we picked up 104, according to the so-called establishment survey that you and Mike reported on earlier this month. 114,000 jobs were created. Is that the right number? Well, no. It's a sample of about 60,000 businesses, I think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so it's a sample, which means the true number is somewhere between, as it turns out, we do know the interval in which it lies, plus or minus 130,000. I'm laughing uncomfortably a little bit because that means the actual number could have been negative, or it could have been very, very healthy. We just don't know. So you get revisions almost immediately after the fact the following month because you and Mike Armstrong report on those. And then once a year or so, as I understand it, not something I pay too much attention to historically.
No one pays attention to it historically.
Okay, so I'm not alone. But it's a big deal this year because it intersects with these concerns about an uncomfortable amount of slack opening up in the labor market, taking things at face value. We know that some slack has opened up. Labor market conditions, said differently, have loosened. Everybody knows this. Unemployment's gone up. You can sense, even if you're not tracking in your mind past payroll changes, that the pace has slowed a bit. The big question is, has it slowed even more, the pace of job additions, according to the establishment survey, than we thought it had? In which case, the Fed might indeed be a little bit behind the curve in terms of loosening monetary policy, lowering interest rates. So it's hitting at a very sensitive time, thus the attention and some of the eye-popping, too. Estimates of revisions from Goldman Sachs and others with swarms of PhD economists who ought to have a good sense for this.
And here's what the BLS does, is twice a year, they do it in August, they do a preliminary one in August, and then a final revision in March of the following year. They do this every year, by the way. This is not something that's a one-off. I literally went and pulled the data this morning when I knew we were going to be talking about this because I knew that it was going to be heated, because I've been on Twitter for like the last 2 days now, and all I'm reading about is, oh, the BLS has been making up the numbers, and now they got caught, and, blah, blah, blah.
You should see Twitter now, Chuck.
Should I?
22 minutes late, you can imagine what it looks like?
Yes. But in any case, like, people are like, oh, like, they finally got caught in there, like, having to, like, tuck tail. No, they literally do this every year in August. Every year in August and every year in March. And the reason why is, when the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out their monthly jobs numbers, they use what they call a birth-death estimate for the number of businesses that are out there. Effectively, they don't know how many businesses actually exist at any one time. It gets at what Marc talks about in terms of this being a statistic that they're estimating. So what they do is they estimate how many businesses are being created in a month and how many are being closed down. Because they don't know. There's no way to know what that is in real time. And so what they do after they get more data, specifically the jobless claims data, the weekly jobless claims data that they get, they effectively mesh that with the numbers that they have and then say, okay, our estimates on the number of businesses added or removed was off in this direction, and here's how we're revising the numbers as we need to. So if you go back and look at the last three, and I'm just going to use the last three just because, again, they're fresh, and this has been something that, is happening, every year. The last three revisions that we've seen, you go back and look at them. Last year, the revision was 50,000 fewer jobs created than thought. Okay, it's not a big shift. The year before was 800,000 more jobs created than initially thought. They revised the numbers up by 800,000. Remember, that was 2022. 2021, 1 million more jobs created than they thought. They revised the number up by 1 million. So the idea that, hey, they might be revising the numbers down by 1 million and this is some huge conspiracy, no, they do these revisions every year. every single year they do them. This year, it appears the estimates were likely far too rosy in terms of the number of businesses being created versus those shuttering. In previous years, they were far too pessimistic about those numbers, and so they had big upward revisions. It's very possible that the big downward revision now is because they had such big upward revisions before that they changed the methodology to try to minimize errors in that direction and maybe ended up producing one in the other direction. But I also see people pointing to this as, well, this is evidence that this is, politicized and they've been inflating these numbers. Let me ask you this. If the federal government were inflating the numbers, specifically, if the Biden administration were inflating the numbers, would they go and admit it right before an election?
No. I know that was rhetorical, but I feel compelled to answer no.
If you're making the numbers up, you don't just say, well, there's an election coming up, got to come clean. No,
we can't.
This is not how this works.
Do we have to dignify these?
We do, because it's pervasive. It's everywhere.
The people making these assertions know nothing about the process. They've never been in government. Never mind worked for the BLS, where you have professional, lifetime PhD economists who couldn't be more. They have their political biases, but they couldn't be more professional. They serve through various administrations. They have 30, 40-year careers. These people don't turn over with changes in presidential administration or parties.
They don't.
So the idea that, look, they freely admit that these estimates have have wide error bands, if you like, associated with them. Thus the revisions. There's no bias in the revisions based on incumbent party. People have looked at this, and there are no biases in the revisions. They're effectively random. So there's no evidence for that. And I'm not even sure, again, dignifying these, I'll just call them conspiracy theories with an explanation, to me just perpetuates the conversation. But I guess, like you said, it's in the news. We have to address it.
Tucker, I'm still looking. I'm still trying to see if we have. Yeah. Oh, it looks like we do have numbers out now.
Bloomberg just came out. It looks like the BLS just published it.
Do you know what they published? I still can't find the actual number.
It is, and this is according to the Bloomberg ticker I just saw here. BLS, U.S. employment rose 1.3% in year through March 2024.
Okay, so the ballpark, just eyeballing it right now, it is about 1 million job addition reduction, so that takes job growth over that time period from, call it 240,000 down to about 160,000 a month. So that's what you're looking at on this.
Okay, so doesn't that belie the idea that this is somehow politically influenced? Why would you do that to yourself if you were the incumbent administration?
That's the question that you would ask. I mean, look, if you really want made-up numbers, you go to, like, North Korea, where they just published one number. They probably don't even publish a number in North Korea. Look at Chinese GDP. They publish it, and like, that's it. Or they just stop publishing data that they don't want you to see. Like the youth unemployment rate when they stopped that, what was it, 12 or 18 months ago? Yeah. Like, that's what you do. Yeah. You don't say, no, we were wrong. It was actually worse. So this, again, it happens every year that they do these revisions. It's not that the BLS suddenly got caught fudging numbers. No, they revise these numbers every year to try to make them more accurate. And some years they miss high, like this year where they had to revise the number of jobs created down by 1 million. Some years like 2021 and 22, they miss low and have to revise them up by almost 1 million. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got Wall Street Watch, and then we're joined by Todd Lutsky from Cushing & Dolan right after this.
Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @TFE Show. Breaking business news is always first, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Discover the fish and farm market at the Boston Fish Pier. Open every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Boston Seaport. From fresh seafood to juicy tomatoes and sweet corn to grab-and-go options, indulge in the peak of summer's bounty. Support local farmers and enjoy the freshest ingredients all summer long. Sponsored by Mass Farmers Markets, a nonprofit dedicated to championing farmers markets across Massachusetts. Find a market near you at massfarmersmarkets.org.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
This Veterans Day weekend, help honor all who have served this country. Join us on Saturday, November 9th for the 9th Annual Disabled American Veterans 5K Boston. It's a run and walk to support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. Saturday, November 9th at DCR's Castle Island in South Boston. Together, let's honor all who have sacrificed for our freedom. Register or donate now at dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and irrevocable trusts can help you. Keep your assets safe from probate and the nursing home by calling Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699. Get their new guide called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up, because we have something better.
Stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit GoRedForWomen.org today to learn more.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and our guide this month is titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree. Mike, one of the key focuses of this piece is about how to figure out how much income you actually need in retirement and where you start tapping assets from. How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, don't you hate the rules of thumb on this, right? Like, oh, I'm going to need 80% of what I had before. The answer is that there is no rule of thumb. There's no good one that you can use to figure out how much income you are going to need in retirement. Do you have a mortgage? What sort of travel are you planning to do? Yes, you won't be commuting as much. Maybe you and your spouse can go down to one car, but if all of a sudden your plan is to dramatically increase your travel budget, that changes everything.
And when you look at other things that can matter, it could be, where's your family located? Are you planning on moving somewhere else? Do you have grandkids that you want to spoil? These are all things that are going to play into that discussion of how much money you need to retire on.
Yeah, no doubt. And so it really does start right there with assessing your retirement ability. It's what type of income am I going to need in order to just be happy. It's not necessarily about maintaining lifestyle. It might be a different lifestyle once you're retired, but will I be content with it? And what sort of activities and lifestyle am I looking for once I am done with that 9 to 5, once I'm done putting in the hours for working and saving for my future?
Our guide this month is titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree. The way to request it is by calling 800-393-4001. Again, it's titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can request it by calling 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Time now for Wall Street Watch, a complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Well, markets are in positive territory narrowly as Wall Street is sifting through the annual jobs revision posted just minutes ago. A lot to digest there, in addition to more retailer earnings unveiled this morning. Right now, the Dow is up by 9 points. S&P 500 is up by about 0.25%, and the NASDAQ is up by 0.33%. Russell 2000 also up by 0.33%. 10-year Treasury yield is flat at 3.81%, and crude oil up about 0.5%, trading at $73.53 a barrel. Target's shares are jumping 14% after the retail giant handily beat second quarter earnings and revenue expectations, and also hiked its annual earnings guidance. However, the company maintained a cautious outlook for the full year. Macy's, on the other hand, slashed its full-year sales forecast and is contending with selective shoppers and more promotions. As for the second quarter, the struggling retailer beat earnings expectations but did miss on revenue. That stock down by 14%. The parent company to TJ Maxx and Marshall's, TJX Companies, posted another quarter of sales growth and upped its annual profit forecast, sending that stock up by 6%. Meanwhile, breaking news from Ford this morning, where the Detroit car maker canceled its plans for a large electric SUV and expects to take a $1.9 billion hit related to special charges and write-downs. Ford continues to adjust its EV plans as a result of softer than expected demand on that front. That stock, however, up by 1.5%. And after today's closing, later this afternoon at about 2 p.m., Wall Street will be sifting through meeting minutes from the Fed's July meeting. I'm Tucker Silva, and that's Wall Street Watch.
This is Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. If you have an existing estate plan or are in the market for one, Todd Lutsky is here to answer your questions and help you plan for later life. Ask Todd is presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 35 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Visit CushingDolan.com. Now, here's Todd Lutsky.
And we are now joined by Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan. We call the segment Ask Todd because you get to ask Todd your questions. We've got the studio lines open at 888-205-2263. Todd Lutsky is here, and so again, this is your chance to ask him your questions about your estate plan, or maybe your lack thereof, and hey, how do you get moving in the right direction? That phone number again is 888-205-2263. We almost got through everyone last week, but didn't quite. So, again, if you do have a question, get calling to make sure that you get an early spot in line here. That phone number, again, is 888-205-2263, and we'll get to your calls in just a little bit. Mr. Lutsky, how are you today?
I am never better, and you?
Things are looking up, actually.
Good.
I found a book yesterday, and it's called How to Solve 50% of Life's Problems.
Oh, yeah?
I bought 2.
That'll help. You're all set.
I figured I'd be good. So, Todd, I want to talk a little bit about Medicaid irrevocable trusts. And people hear the idea of, hey, there's this 5-year look back. Couple questions on that. Can you just define that term for people who aren't familiar with it? And the second question is, when does that look back period actually start?
Yeah, great point. A couple of things on the 5-year rule. Many people, I know you mentioned it in connection with the trust, Chuck, but I just want to clarify one thing before I define it. That some people think that, oh, well, if it's 5 years, if I put my assets into this irrevocable trust, I'll just give it to my kids instead. Well, the 5-year rule applies regardless of who you give it to. You could give it to your kids, which nothing good comes from that, never mind the fact that it takes 5 years to protect it from the nursing home. There's a lot of other negatives. But whether you give it to a child, whether you give it to a trust, whether the answer is that any time you take an asset and dispose of it and receive less than fair market value in exchange for what you did, then you made a disqualifying transfer, and that is the definition of what triggers the 5-year waiting period. So that's a disqualifying transfer. What is it? It means that if you've transferred that asset and received less than fair market value in exchange for that, then you get sick in the next 5 years and go to a nursing home, you'll be denied Medicaid benefits. It's that simple. It's a hard and fast stop. So if you're going to do your planning, try to think about, that's why we do it now, right? We do it when we're feeling good, not when we're not feeling good. And we can make the transfer and get beyond our 5-year waiting period. It has nothing to do with any other part of your estate plan. Your trust will still avoid probate, reduce estate taxes, provide a bloodline plan. You could die the next day. I jokingly, you say the dying part isn't the problem. That works immediately. It's only the nursing home that takes 5 years in order to get there. When does it start? It starts the day you create the trust, let's say, or the day you make the disqualifying transfer. But since I'm talking more about estate planning, let's focus on the trust. A client comes in and says, let's do Medicaid planning. I say, fine. I explain the whole process. We get started. They leaving the meeting. They'll say, okay, so did the 5-year clock start to run yet? No. When does it start to run? It starts to run the day they come back in after we review the documents and actually transfer the asset into the trust. They need to sign the document and fund the document. It's the funding of the trust that triggers the 5-year waiting period and the clock beginning to run. So hopefully that was a good definition all the way around.
Talking with Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan. If you've got a question for Todd, this is your chance to ask him. Studio lines are open at 888-205-2263. Still got space for maybe one or two more people at most. Again, 888-205-2263. We're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, it's right to your questions with Todd then. That phone number again is 888-205-2263, and we're taking your calls when we return.
Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky every Wednesday at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Summer in New England is spectacular. Winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are 3 of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com, where you'll find all the information you need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com.
When you stop working, you stop earning a paycheck, and if you don't have a good sense of what your plans are in retirement, you may be faced with some financial challenges. Hi, this is Chuck Zodda from the Armstrong Advisory Group. In order to retire comfortably without that financial strain, you can either reduce your expenses or find ways to replace your pre-retirement income so that you can determine the kind of retirement lifestyle you can afford. Our new guide this month is called A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can get it right now by calling 800-393-4001. In it, we'll walk you through several considerations you'll need to keep in mind as you develop your retirement plan. Get your copy of this brand new guide today by calling 800-393-4001. That's 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and creating a trust is a great way to help. Cushing & Dolan are experts in elder law. Their brand new guide out this month is called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. There are many types of trust to consider, but irrevocable trusts can establish the kinds of safeguards you'll need to protect your assets long term. Learn about how the trust can protect your assets from probate and potentially eliminate your estate taxes. If you're closing in on retirement and have an existing trust that needs a second look, or if you need a new trust to ensure that your assets are secured, call Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699 and let them help you create a plan that gives you confidence in your financial future. That number again is 866-848-5699. Or request the guide online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. That's LegalExchangeShow.com. CushingandDolan.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Are you retired like me and you just found out you owe the IRS a ton of money? Well, what would your life be like if they took your retirement savings away from you? They can do it and your property. If you owe the IRS back taxes or you haven't filed in a while, the Tax Relief Line is here to help you. They can stop the IRS from taking your retirement savings. If you qualify, you could have your tax bill reduced to zero. That's right. If you're retired and you owe the IRS a lot in back taxes, you could have your entire tax bill reduced to zero due. The IRS has now hired thousands of new employees, so they're ready to come after you. Don't let them take your retirement savings or property. Make this free call now.
800-251-2153. 800-251-2153. 800-251-2153. That's 800-251-2153.
You're listening to Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
All right, we got some questions for you, Todd. Let's go first to Eric in Longmeadow. Eric, what's your question for Todd Lutsky?
Good morning, gentlemen. My question is, I'm in charge of a family member's trust. I'm the trustee of his trust.
Okay.
Now, I pay his bills, his credit card, and whatnot.
Uh-oh. I don't think we can hear him. So,
hello?
Yeah.
Tucker, why don't we put Eric on hold for a second and see if
Yeah,
we can get him back. And why don't we go instead to, let's go to Nancy in Norwood just while we get Eric back on the line there. Nancy, what's your question for Todd Lutsky?
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. 15 years ago, my father died, and a year later, my mother signed the house over to me. We live together. I've been taking care of her, but I have 3 other siblings. What happens to the house when she passes away?
Well, you said, if I understand this, Nancy, you said that after your dad died, your mom gifted the entire house to you. Is that correct?
Right.
So only your name is on the deed?
Correct.
All right. So when you say what happens to the house after she dies, nothing, because she doesn't own it. Her estate doesn't own it. It's not part of her estate. It's a completed gift that she made to you years ago. I'm guessing she probably didn't file a gift tax return, not that it necessarily would have mattered. You now are the fee simple title holder to the property. So if it's been more than 5 years ago, it's protected from the nursing home. Unfortunately, you lost the step up in basis because she won't die owning it. And ultimately, you have no obligation to do anything with it when your mom dies. Now, if your mom's wishes are, I'd like to leave this to all three of my children, then, or however many children she has, then the answer is that's not going to happen unless you decide you wanted to honor that wish. But if you do, you simply will have to prepare a deed transferring the property to the other siblings, which will ultimately be a gift by you to them. And so technically it'll be a taxable gift because I'm sure it's going to exceed $18,000 per year per person. So in that case, you would need to file a gift tax return. But the good news is you have a $13 million gift tax exemption, $13.6 million gift tax exemption. So it shouldn't really matter from a estate tax standpoint for you, I don't think. I don't know the numbers. But it will eat into your Massachusetts $2 million estate tax exemption a little. So I don't love the idea that she gave it away, but she did. So it is what it is. And unfortunately, she does run the risk of potentially disinheriting her other children, as well as exposing it to your creditors and, of course, not even having the right to live there. But I know you'll take care of her and you won't kick her out. But these are all issues for the bigger listening audience, right? These are things that I don't love. I don't love it when houses are given away to children during life. I don't think anything good really comes from it. This is just a little example of it. But hope that helps, Nancy. And folks, one of the things you can do to prevent giving away your house, or instead of giving away your house while you're living, is learn about these Medicaid irrevocable trusts. The guide we're giving away is Unlocking the Power of Medicaid Irrevocable Trusts. In a very simple question and answer format, it will explain to you all the do's and don'ts of these trusts. And if you've ever thought these weren't right for you, or you weren't sure about how they work, or you're afraid of them, this guide will clear that up for you. I mean, it answers everything from what can I put in the trust? What are the gift tax consequences? Can I sell my house? Can I buy another one? What are the taxes if I sell my house? Can I live off the income? Can I manage my money? Folks, on and on. All the questions are answered in that question and answer format. Get the guide, 866-848-5699 or legalexchangeshow.com. Again, 866-848-5699 or legalexchangeshow.com, and do that rather than give away your house when you're living.
Let's go back to Eric in Longmeadow. I think we got some better sound now. Eric, what's your question for Todd?
How you doing? My father passed, and he put me in charge of his estate, and I'm the trustee of another family member.
Okay.
And charge that I pay all his bills and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the money runs out, and if he has any debt, am I on the hook for that?
So let me ask you this. You're saying your dad died, there's a trust in place, and there's a share inside Dad's trust of which you control that money for the benefit of your sibling, correct?
Yes.
And you actually use that money to pay some of his bills, to make distributions to him as he needs it, correct?
Correct.
So he never owns this money. He doesn't own this share. This share that's inside Dad's, now your late father's trust, isn't owned by him. So it's not even subject to his creditors. So if he has creditors, these assets are not subject to those creditors because this isn't his money. And no, you're absolutely not on the hook because it's not your money either. So, and you're not subject to his creditors. You're just trustee of a bucket of money that really, it's to take care of him, but he doesn't own it. So the quick answer is no, you're not on the hook as trustee of that trust if in fact this money runs out and he runs up creditor problems and bill problems. Not your worry.
Todd, we've got another caller for you here. Let's go to Clyde in New Hampshire. Clyde, you are on with Todd Lutsky.
Hey, how you doing, Todd?
Good.
Quick question. Do a house have to be paid for before you put it into a trust?
So you're saying if you have a home and it's encumbered, you have a mortgage on it or a home equity line or something, correct?
Correct.
So if it's your primary residence and you have an equity line or a mortgage still outstanding on your home, when you want to put it into a Medicaid, I'm guessing one of these Medicaid irrevocable trusts. So I'll answer it both ways. One, if you want to put it into a revocable trust because that's the kind of planning you want to do, it does not matter. It's a revocable trust. You can put encumbered property in there anytime you want, and it will not trigger the due on sale clause. And that's what we're worried about, right? We're worried about transferring property and triggering the due on sale or the due on transfer clause that I'm going to venture to say exists in every mortgage, okay? Because remember, they lent the money to you, not to who you're giving it to. Okay, so revocable trust, no problem. Irrevocable trusts. If you want to transfer your primary residence to an irrevocable Medicaid trust and you have either a HELOC or you have a regular mortgage outstanding, you can still do it, but you need to reserve what is called a life estate. Now, many of you heard this term tossed around many times. A life estate is simply, in the deed, it'll say, I hereby reserve a legal life estate in the property. What that means is you kept a little nugget of ownership. That nugget of ownership means you have the right to live there the rest of your life. You're entitled to collect all the income that property pays, and you got to pay the expenses. Hooray, right? That's part of being an owner. You're still deemed the present owner of the property because of that little nugget of ownership that you kept. And thereby, when you transfer it to the trust, you cannot trigger the due on sale clause because you did not transfer it, right? You kept a nugget that allows you to continue to live there. That nugget will also preserve that home equity line or that mortgage. So long-winded answer to yes, you can still do Medicaid planning even though your house has a mortgage on it.
Mr. Lutsky, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
This has been Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky has been presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 30 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Call 800-393-4001 or visit CushingDolan.com. The views expressed in this segment are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Armstrong Advisory does not provide any legal or tax advice. Please consult with your legal or tax advisor on such matters. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Elder life planning can be overwhelming, so make sure you're prepared, or you could make costly mistakes that affect your overall plan. Irrevocable trusts are the most common type of trust that folks use for financial protection. And while they can be complicated to create, they help keep your assets safe because they contain specific protections that many of us need, like the possibility of eliminating your estate taxes. Cushing & Dolan are experts in elder law and taxation, and they can devise a plan that covers you in every area where issues can arise. Their new guide is called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. Learn more about how these trusts can benefit your family by calling 866-848-5699 right now. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide right now by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Still a lot to come as we continue through the show, including a little bit of a move from Walmart in terms of one of their previous investments that they are now unloading. Also, we're going to be talking a little bit about what's going on with Generation X. We talk about baby boomers and millennials a lot, which if you're in Gen X, look, you know that you kind of get forgotten between those two groups because, well, we're both kind of attention hungry and like to have the focus on ourselves, but that's neither here nor there. But we're going to talk a little bit about Gen X approaching retirement because we're getting close for the first Gen Xers. And then also an update on the FTC's non-compete rule getting struck down by a Texas judge. All that and more coming up.
Despite overwhelming support from Democrats and Republicans, time is running out for Congress to pass the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act, which will keep AM radio in cars. Text AM to 52886 and ask Congress to bring this bill to a vote now. AM radio is too important to let this moment pass us by.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Summer in New England is spectacular. Winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are 3 of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com, where you'll find all the information you need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
This is the Money Matters Radio Network. WBNW 1120 AM and W275 CM-FM. Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
This is Tucker Silva with the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with your Financial Exchange quick tip of the day. And today, we're talking about how Medicaid irrevocable trusts operate. Now, Todd, it takes 5 years to protect your assets from the cost of long-term care. If you aren't sure you or your spouse will make the 5 years before going into a nursing home, should you even bother to do your estate planning?
The answer is absolutely yes, you should bother. And here's why, folks. There's people who maybe don't even start their planning until they're 80. It doesn't mean just because you're 80, you don't try, you don't plan, right? 85, you plan. You don't know whether you're going to get sick or not get sick. But by the same token, when you're 65 and you're doing your planning, you also might not make it past the 5 years. So just because you might not make it past the 5 years is not a reason to get this clock started. For example, lots of times when we put assets in the trust, we leave lots of assets outside the trust, especially IRA assets. So let's say you made it 3 years, but you had $200,000 in an IRA outside the trust. If I get $1 million worth of assets in the trust, I'm happy to spend $200,000 of my IRA to get past the remaining 2 years to get me protected from the nursing home with the $1 million that went in there. So getting the clock started is always better than not having the clock started.
Cushing & Dolan have been helping families like yours for more than 30 years, and find out if they can help yours too. Request this brand new guide called Unlocking the Power of Medicaid Irrevocable Trust. Call 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Discover the fish and farm market at the Boston Fish Pier. Open every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Boston Seaport. From fresh seafood to juicy tomatoes and sweet corn to grab-and-go options, indulge in the peak of summer's bounty. Support local farmers and enjoy the freshest ingredients all summer long. Sponsored by Mass Farmers Markets, a nonprofit dedicated to championing farmers markets across Massachusetts. Find a market near you at massfarmersmarkets.org.
If you're getting close to retirement, you've likely thought about how you'll spend all of your free time. Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and with no more 40-hour work weeks or hour-long commutes on your agenda, you might find yourself on the links in Florida or traveling the world with your spouse and family. The financial pieces of the retirement puzzle are important. Having a specific plan about how you want to live day-to-day in your post-professional life is just as important, and our new guide called A Day in the Life of a Retiree may help. You can get it today by calling 800-393-4001. In the guide, we're going to discuss how to connect your financial needs in retirement to where and how you'll be living. Call us again at 800-393-4001 and get your free copy today. That number again, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hughes. This Veterans Day weekend, help honor all who've served our country and join WBZ for the annual DAV 5K, a run or walk to support disabled vets here in Massachusetts with housing, transportation, and other critical support. Saturday, November 9th at DCR's Castle Island in South Boston. Let's thank all who have sacrificed for our freedom and help our heroes on their road to recovery. Visit DAV5K.Boston to register or donate today.
The DAV 5K Boston is presented by Veterans Development Corporation.
Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and irrevocable trusts can help you. Keep your assets safe from probate and the nursing home by calling Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699. Get their new guide called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
For 40 years, Cancer Support Community has been a relentless ally for anyone impacted by cancer, with free services provided online and in person, with their newest location in Massachusetts. Connect with Cancer Support Community Massachusetts for free emotional support, educational resources, patient navigation, financial counseling, and more. 617-797-3391. CancerSupportMass.org, CancerSupportMass.org.
The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Marc Fandetti. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting DAV5K.Boston and making a donation today. The DAV 5K Boston is presented by Veterans Development Corporation. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Marc Fandetti.
A little bit after 11 here, and markets are somewhat stuck in neutral, just not really any convincing moves in either direction. The Dow is currently off about 40 points. The S&P is up 9, the NASDAQ up 39, so mixed throughout the first hour and a half trading. We were up a little bit more about a half hour ago, but have since given back a decent chunk of those gains. 10-year Treasury is down 3 basis points to 3.788%. We've got oil, West Texas Intermediate, up 25 cents a barrel to 73.42. The AAA national average for gas prices falling another 0.6 of a cent down to 3.39 and 0.8 of a cent. Haven't seen a 3.30 number in probably a few months now. And based on gasoline futures, we do still have a little bit of room to move down further. So we might nationally get down into that 3.35 range over the next week or two, before we get some clarity on what the next moves look like on that front. And we've got gold today down $9.90 an ounce to $25.40.70. Marc, there is a piece in Barron's today, and it is titled, "What Caused the Surge in Inflation Inside One of the Election's Biggest Debates?" What does the piece talk about before we try to actually answer the questions posed by it?
Oh, I was just ready to give my take, Chuck. I didn't.
Yeah, you can give yours. That's fine.
Well, look, I think researchers, and the piece does cover some of these things, but I've got to admit I only skimmed it because the story's pretty well worn at this point. Depending on your preference as a researcher, you might put more emphasis on some of the factors I'll mention than others, and I'll be really brief. I'll say only that this inflation started in late 2020, early 2021, after trillions of dollars in stimulus had been pumped into the economy. We all remember under both Trump and Biden, several stimulus packages. Some of them went to consumers, some of them went to business owners, effectively putting a lot of money into people's pockets. At the same time, COVID had wrought havoc with supply chains. So goods were piling up. We all remember this. Goods piling up in ports, empty shelves. We had a lot of money to spend, and supply was diminished due to COVID. Naturally, that caused demand to grow much faster than the economy's capacity to meet that demand. Demand exceeded supply in terms of growth rates. That pushed up inflation. Again, this started, started on a month-over-month basis. Some of you might be thinking, no, inflation didn't start under Trump. That started under Biden. It actually didn't, in point of fact. Month-over-month inflation started increasing in late 2020, early 2021. That's very easy to verify, and the reasons why make sense. And then we had another shock about a year after that. Russia invaded Ukraine, pushing up energy prices. And in the meantime, there were little blips and intermittent shocks pushing up prices, subsequent rounds of stimulus, spiking food prices, somewhat related to that. The end result was very high inflation, the highest since the early 1980s, as we remember, and it's since ebbed, I guess as you'd expect, given supply chain normalization, the reduction in energy prices, and perhaps Fed rate increases, which help to keep expectations in check. So it's not an entirely straightforward story, but it's not an overly complicated one either.
Marc, when we look at the landscape today, two questions that people want to ask are actually let me hone in on one of them, because this is kind of central to a whole discussion that seems to be happening right now on this, which is, hey, why are we not seeing prices coming back down? Why are they only moving up just at a slower rate? Can you give just some input as to why that tends to be the case?
Look, in the long run, inflation is a result of too much money, as Milton Friedman once said, chasing too few goods. Inflation is explainable by increases in the supply of money, which the Federal Reserve controls, which is why everybody points the finger at them. In the short run, inflation can happen because, say, energy prices spike or some other outside shock hits the economy, or the federal government overstimulates the economy, puts too much stimulus into it in the form of tax cuts, for example. Sorry, what was the exact question you asked, Chuck? I got off on my usual rant.
Why don't prices move down?
Oh, prices, they've never moved down in the post-war era because money growth can always combat that. There was mild disinflation. I shouldn't say they've never moved down in 1950-51 or 49-50, I forget which. But that was very brief. So outside of that, and in 2008, there was a 12-month period, I forget which, when prices actually came down. So outside of severe economic contractions like the Great Recession, you don't see prices coming down in the modern era. It just doesn't happen. You don't want to wish for it, because that would probably require a deep economic contraction.
I think sometimes people, think about the idea of deflation as something that they'd like to see, where it's like, I'd love to see prices coming down. But
some do, by the way. I'm sorry, can I interrupt just to say, relative prices, everybody knows gas prices can come down.
Well, commodity prices
come
down.
Commodity
prices always come down during a recession or a slowdown. And the big reason why, in my opinion, Marc, is because commodities don't have brains. I know that's like, you're like, what did you just say? The reason why other prices are stickier is that the single biggest input cost to most businesses is what, Marc? Labor. Labor is a huge cost. And, Marc, let's say that you are working at, let's say you're working at a car wash, and I'm paying you $15 an hour to wash cars this year. If I come back to you next year and I say, Marc, you did a great job, but we're trying to cut costs, and I got to pay you $14 an hour now. You're going to be like, no, get out of here. Like, I'm not worth. You paid me $15 last year. You're paying me $15 this year. To be honest, I'd like a raise. So no, like that doesn't work. Humans have egos, and so it's like the labor cost does not move down because we say, no, I got paid X before. I need to get paid Y next year. A piece of wood that gets sold doesn't care how much it gets sold for, and so commodity prices move very differently. You do see them come down after the big spikes. Look at lumber as an example. Lumber prices, which spiked back in 2021, they're back down even below where they were pre-pandemic if you're looking at certain types of products. And it's because labor cost just isn't as high. And again, they're called commodities for a reason. They're interchangeable. You can fully just say, okay, I'm not going to buy nails from you. I'm going to buy nails from you. I'm going to, buy oil from you instead of from you. These are things that you can do. Whereas with people, as much as we talk about people being replaceable, it still takes a lot of work to train up new employees and this and that. And so those wages, which are a huge portion of most other products that are not commodities, most of their cost, they're sticky, and so you don't see those prices move.
Some economists would agree with that. Others would. I don't think it's not just labor. That might be part of it. It's more that firms care about relative prices, and shocks to relative prices have to be really big before firms find it worthwhile to change their prices. This is an area that's been hotly debated, probably will continue to be. Why, when, for example, the Fed pumps money into the economy, why don't all prices just go up? Why does that affect employment? Prices are, after all, just a form of record keeping. And the answer is what researchers call nominal rigidities, which is a fancy way of saying prices don't move in the short term outside of big shocks. And commodities are a good example of completely flexible prices because of their nature. Other goods don't change. Other firms, I should say, don't change relative prices absent a big incentive to do so, a big, obvious, say, boost to their profits. It gets a little hairy, but the upshot, as you said at the beginning, is that prices generally, on average, I'm not talking relative prices here, on average, prices don't go down. And you don't want them to, because that doesn't happen in a modern economy outside of deep economic distress.
No, the thing that people don't realize about deflationary periods, they're not typically accompanied historically by wages staying the same. If you look back at most of the data that we have on deflationary periods in the U.S., which is not good data, it's like, again, mostly from the 1800s, so it's not high quality. It's generally accompanied by wages falling, and so living standards fall as well. What people talk about when they talk about, hey, I want to see deflation, hey, I want to see the purchasing power of my money go further. Well, the way that we've historically seen that over the last 100 or so years is through increases in productivity. Great, we can make more stuff with fewer inputs, and so it costs less to make it, and as a percentage of your income, it costs less to buy it then. That's how we've seen cases where you're seeing living standards increase throughout the last 100 years. It's not because prices went down, it's because efficiency effectively went up, and so you said, okay, we can still make this for the same cost, and yeah, great, we can do that. Even as incomes are rising, you're able to buy more that way. It's not so much that costs are, being driven down, except for, TVs, which now you get like an 88-inch TV for like $3 now, right?
Yeah, sounds about right.
So I still remember back in college, I was like shopping around for a TV, and it was, again, this was 20 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark. And it was, hey, like the TV that you can afford is, 27 inches or something like that. And it was like a couple $100 at the time. And now I think literally you can get like 65, 70-inch TVs for like $200, and it's because, it's just the technology has gotten that much better. But again, it's not like they're still making the 27-inch TV and selling it for $3. It's, no, here's the price point. It's just you get more for it, I guess. So that's, I guess, another way that you can look at it in terms of why prices don't go down is, hey, the old stuff is, rendered obsolete and you can't buy it anymore. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we have trivia. And then let's talk a little bit about Walmart. They are making a sale of an investment they made a few years back. We'll talk about what it is and what it means for the company after this.
Tune in for Trivia, brought to you by Applebee's. Every day at 11:20 for your chance to win cool prizes. Text us at 617-362-1385 and use keyword Applebee's. Complete rules are available at financialexchangeshow.com. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This Veterans Day weekend, help honor all who have served this country. Join us on Saturday, November 9th for the 9th Annual Disabled American Veterans 5K Boston. It's a run and walk to support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. Saturday, November 9th at DCR's Castle Island in South Boston. Together, let's honor all who have sacrificed for our freedom. Register or donate now at dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and irrevocable trusts can help you. Keep your assets safe from probate and the nursing home by calling Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699. Get their new guide called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Recent reports suggest that a record 4.1 million Americans may retire this year alone. Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and if you're one of them, you'll want to have a retirement plan in place that focuses on several objectives. When to actually retire is a very important one to consider. Retiring early while giving you more time to enjoy life after work also means you'll need your money to last longer. Retiring later may not give you as much time to enjoy life's pleasures, but you'll have more time to save money. It's important for your retirement plan to strike a reasonable balance, and our new guide may help. It's called A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and it's yours free by calling 800-393-4001. The guide discusses these issues and more, so please call 800-393-4001. Once again, 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Summer in New England is spectacular. Winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are three of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com, where you'll find all the information you need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com.
Despite overwhelming support from Democrats and Republicans, time is running out for Congress to pass the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act, which will keep AM radio in cars. Text AM to 52886 and ask Congress to bring this bill to a vote now. AM radio is too important to let this moment pass us by.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to STOP.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
The Financial Exchange streams live on YouTube. Like our page and stay up to date on breaking business news all morning long. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Time for trivia here on the Financial Exchange, and it's brought to you by Applebee's. Take your friends or family to any area Applebee's and enjoy half-price late-night appetizers after 9 p.m., including boneless wings, spinach and artichoke dip, and warm pretzels dipped in beer cheese. Don't forget to join Club Applebee's to enjoy exclusive deals and specials. You'll get a free appetizer just for signing up. Now, that's eating good in the neighborhood, void where prohibited. Dine in only. Continuing our 80s theme trivia questions here on the show. Ronald Reagan served as president from 1981 to 1989. Reagan beat incumbent Jimmy Carter in the election in 1980. In 1984, Reagan was reelected president in a landslide. Trivia question today. Who did Ronald Reagan beat in the 1984 presidential election? Once again, who did Ronald Reagan beat in the 1984 presidential election? Be the 10th person today to text us at 617-362-1385 with the correct answer. You'd win a Financial Exchange Show t-shirt and be registered to win a $100 gift card to Applebee's. Be sure to include the keyword Applebee's in your text, and we'll give away that Applebee's gift card on Friday's show. 617-362-1385. And the 10th correct response will be our winner. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
Mark, we've got a story here that Walmart, who had 8 years ago invested in Chinese e-commerce firm JD.com, sold its stake in them earlier in the week, raising about $3.6 billion in doing so. Two different ways that I interpret this. I don't know which one is right. Again, I don't really follow JD very closely here, but the stock is down about 75% from its 2021 peak. So on one hand, Walmart might look at this and just say, hey, this has been kind of a bad investment for us over the last 3 years. We could redeploy that and get better return on our capital by, opening more stores or investing in some other kind of company, some new technology, whatever it might be. That's one part of it. The other is, hey, maybe we're concerned about geopolitical tensions and we want to remove that risk as well. And so that could be playing into this when you look at the decision. Anything else that you think could be a potential cause? Because obviously the two of us don't know.
Nope, I'm obviously clueless, but I do like your first explanation. That's a good generic explanation for anything you see a firm do. They have an average cost of capital and a return target internally. And if a business line is not meeting it, either now or nor expected to meet it, you shed that business line. And Walmart does that pretty ruthlessly and effectively. I think this is one of the hallmarks of a good, efficiently run business. And shareholders, I assume, not being privy to any special knowledge here, but I assume shareholders would like something like this.
Let's talk a little bit about minimum wage. There's an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal calling for a bump to the federal minimum wage from the current level that it currently sits at $7.25 an hour. Mark, your thoughts on this?
Well, minimum wage is not a great way to pull people out of poverty. Economists know this, but it may not be the worst thing in the world to do optically or politically. It may not do much real harm, is what I should say. It may not price too many people out of the labor market. Let me explain what I mean by that real briefly. When you make someone's wages too high relative to their productivity, and this is true if you think about it of new entrants to the labor force or younger people, they ain't going to get hired. Firms don't find it profitable to do so. I think this is at the risk of using a dangerous term, that's common sense. So you price certain people out of the labor market when you make the wage too high relative to their contributions to the firm on the margin. Economists have always known this. But there was a lot of research in the early 90s that said, and it was done specifically in a New Jersey-Pennsylvania comparison because they're so close geographically. Jersey raised its wage, Pennsylvania didn't. So you had pretty homogenous labor markets with different wages. What happened when Jersey raised its minimum wage in what is now a famous study, and many follow-on studies replicated these results? There wasn't a detrimental impact to employment. So economists for a long time, and maybe those of us that went to college in, say, the 90s probably came away with this as dogma. Raising the minimum wage is bad. It causes unemployment. Many so-called microeconomists, those that study labor markets, would say, nah, that's not necessarily the case. It depends on other things. So, Chuck, if they want to do this for optical or political reasons, raise it to $10 or $12 an hour, whatever they're considering, that may not be a binding, so to speak. It may not cause havoc in the lower skilled end of the labor market.
One other piece that I think filters into this, and I don't have the most recent data just because we likely don't have any more recent data, but this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2022, looking back at 2021. And according to their data, the percentage of hourly paid workers earning the prevailing federal minimum wage or less was 1.4% in 2021. So only 1 in 100 hourly workers makes near that wage. And so part of it, look, if you're raising the minimum wage and only 1% of workers are making that much, workers that are already making above that minimum wage are not necessarily going to see their incomes changed, disrupted, or otherwise impacted unless firms are forced to reset their entire pay scale. Now, most of this is done regionally when you look at, why this is the case. Hey, someone in Massachusetts, as an example, can't make federal minimum wage because the state minimum wage is higher to begin with. So this wouldn't even affect someone in Massachusetts as an example. Most states. I think there's maybe a dozen.
Yeah, and they're all in the South. And maybe
Correct.
New Hampshire, pardon me, New Hampshire, if I'm offending anybody. But mostly in the South, they tie it to the federal minimum wage.
So we'll take a look at exactly where that is later. Let's take a quick break. Trivia answers next.
Bringing the latest financial news straight to your radio every day. It's the Financial Exchange on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
For 40 years, Cancer Support Community has been a relentless ally for anyone impacted by cancer, with free services provided online and in person, with their newest location in Massachusetts. Connect with Cancer Support Community Massachusetts for free emotional support, educational resources, patient navigation, financial counseling, and more. 617-797-3391. CancerSupportMass.org. CancerSupportMass.org.
We are the Debt Destroyer Network. Any debt you have, credit card, tax, student loan debt, call now for free information that helps you destroy your debt. It's great advice. Plus, when you make this free call now, we have Debt Destroyer experts ready to help. They can show you how to destroy your debt and get your life back on track. Debt problems don't have to be overwhelming. You can live stress-free and debt-free. Credit cards, medical bills, IRS tax problems, even student loan debt. Learn about free programs offered by the credit card companies, hospitals, and even the government that can help slash your debt. Call the Debt Destroyer now for free information. Call now. 800-430-8804. 800-430-8804. 800-430-8804. Again, that's 800-430-8804.
Discover the fish and farm market at the Boston Fish Pier. Open every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Boston Seaport. From fresh seafood to juicy tomatoes and sweet corn to grab-and-go options, indulge in the peak of summer's bounty. Support local farmers and enjoy the freshest ingredients all summer long. Sponsored by Mass Farmers Markets, a nonprofit dedicated to championing farmers markets across Massachusetts. Find a market near you at massfarmersmarkets.org.
Are you looking to volunteer for an amazing nonprofit organization that helps our veterans? The DAV Department of Massachusetts Transportation Network needs volunteers right now. This network provides free transportation to and from any VA medical appointment for veterans of all eras. To become a volunteer driver, you do not need to be a veteran or a DAV member. You just need to have the willingness to help our veterans and have a valid driver's license. Sign up now at davma.org. That's davma.org.
Protecting your assets is your most important financial responsibility, and irrevocable trusts can help you. Keep your assets safe from probate and the nursing home by calling Cushing & Dolan right now at 866-848-5699. Get their new guide called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we've got a guide out this month titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree. The big focus of this guide is about figuring out what you actually want to do with your time in retirement, not just the financial piece, but how are you going to spend your days? How does someone go about figuring that out, Mike, or starting to figure it out?
Yeah, Chuck, I love this piece because it is a lot different than our normal course of what we put together from the Armstrong Advisory Group. And what I tell people frequently, one, I'm not going to tell you how to spend your retirement. I have no idea. But the most successful retirees, and by successful, I mean the most content in retirement, who are not stressed about money, are those who have really thought through a coherent plan of not just what I don't want to do in retirement, i.e. work, but what I want to accomplish and do when I'm done working.
It seems to me that it really has to be something where you say, I'm retiring to do this, not retiring from doing that more than anything else.
And often that's the focus because, look, for a lot of us, work is extremely stressful. We've been supporting families for decades, and the allure of not having to do that, not having to pull in that paycheck anymore is really tempting. But I'm here to say that I've looked at a lot of this from a lot of different people in all sorts of different industries, and the most successful ones are the ones that are retiring because they're passionate about something that they want to do that they finally have time for.
Our guide is titled A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can request it by calling 800-393-4001. Again, the guide is A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can request it by calling 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Missed one of our shows? Catch up anytime by asking your Alexa smart speaker to play The Financial Exchange. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Trivia question today was, who did Ronald Reagan beat in the 1984 presidential election? Well, that'll be Walter Mondale. He served as the vice president under Jimmy Carter from 77 to 81. Reagan beat Mondale in a landslide victory, carrying 524 electoral votes, 49 states, and winning 58.8% of the popular vote. Winner today of the Financial Exchange Show t-shirt was Megan from Yarmouth, Mass. And Megan's also registered to win a $100 gift card to Applebee's, which we'll give away on Friday's show. And trivia is brought to you by Applebee's. Enjoy half-price late-night appetizers after 9 p.m. and join Club Applebee's to enjoy exclusive deals and specials. You'll get a free appetizer just for signing up. Now, that's eating good in the neighborhood. Void where prohibited. Dine in only.
So, when we talk about generations on the Financial Exchange, we usually mention two. We talk about the boomers, we complain about them. We talk about the millennials, we complain about them. We don't really touch on Generation X a whole lot, which is pretty familiar ground to Gen X. They're used to being sandwiched between, two me-first generations, one of which I am part of. So I'm eating my own cooking on this one. When we look at Gen X, they are now about to start hitting retirement age. At least the first of the Gen Xers are getting into that ballpark. Gen X is defined as being born between 1965 and 1980. Mark, my first question on this is, these generations are just too big, aren't they? Like, what does someone born in 1965 have in common with someone born in 1980?
Oh, I was thinking the opposite. That does not constitute a generation. It's like half a generation. But
really?
Well,
interesting.
Is it because how am I I'm born in 1972? How am I a different generation? You were born sometime in the 1980s,
yes.
Latter half of the 1980s. So we're clearly more than a decade apart, but culturally not that far apart. I have far more in common with somebody, say, your age than I do my own parents, who are obviously a generation before me. I don't know. I just think that we use the word generation a little too loosely. Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe maybe you're right. I guess I'm thinking of it from the perspective of, like, you remember stuff from the 80s that I only read about. Like
gather around, children.
Let
me tell you about Ronald Reagan.
Exactly. It's exactly what I'm talking about.
It's not wrong to love a man when it's Ronald Reagan.
Anyways,
or under any circumstances these days, but particularly when it's Ronald Reagan. Sorry, Chuck. Go ahead.
No. You're all good. It was really good, actually. I enjoyed that. In any case, when we talk about,
so did I.
I'm
Go
not
ahead,
gonna be able to finish the segment. No, it's fine. When we talk about Gen X, so they are hitting retirement age right now because, again, if you're born in 65, you do the math out. You say, okay, I'm turning 60 next year, and full retirement age or Medicare age, they're within reach over, the next few years. In some cases, look, depending on the profession that you chose, you might be getting into forced retirement at age 60 if you're in something that's physically demanding or, whatever it might be.
That's right.
But the question that you have that is out there is, hey, is Gen X prepared for retirement compared to the generations surrounding them? And the data that we have is suggesting that, yeah, the overall picture has improved over the last 10 years, mostly because markets have been very good, and so the Gen Xers that have had money invested in financial markets have done well. But a key difference from Gen X and the previous generations is that's really when the massive drop-off in defined benefit plans, pension plans started, and defined contribution plans started becoming the norm for workers. Your thoughts, Mark?
That's part of it, lower returns, because we've been contributing most aggressively up to and through deep downturns, a few now if you count COVID. So I think of people that came into the workforce like I did in the mid-1990s, put a lot of money into our 401ks relative to salary early on, saw more than half of it wiped out at one point. We also had the opportunity to buy in at lower prices, but not that much lower than we'd started with. Yep. The same happened again. It was seemingly right on the heels of that. Only several years later in the Great Recession, took several years, as you know, for stock prices to recover. And Chuck, as you point out, on top of that, there are other structural headwinds like changes in the complexion of corporate benefits, elimination of DB, defined benefit, that is pension plans. Houses getting a lot more expensive relative to median income. That happened when we were first buying in the very late 1990s for those on the those at least in my subset of Gen X into the mid-2000s. Homes were selling at 2, 3, 4, 5 times median income, much like they are today. So younger generations like to lament how much they've got to pay relative to median income. So did we. So houses have been obscenely expensive, I guess is my point, relative to past generations' experience for roughly the past 25 years. So we have more expensive houses. We also were the first generation to come out with a lot of student debt. So any number of factors that you might call headwinds that make it more difficult to accumulate wealth. Though I think it's somewhat overstated in that you've seen the stats, Chuck. We've had the opportunity to build wealth comparable to prior generations at this point in our lives, too.
Summer in New England is spectacular, but winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are three of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com where you'll find all the information you'll need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean Paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark, do you think that we've reached the tipping point on tipping in the United States?
It seems like a lot of people are talking about it and they're not happy. So if that defines tipping point, then perhaps.
And there's a piece in the Financial Times, which I always love when British publications talk about what's going on in the U.S. because even in here, like they explicitly note they're like, we don't quite understand what you're doing. It's kind of weird, and what they're talking about is the idea of this proliferation of tipping, which we've covered quite a bit on our show over the last year or two, where it used to be expected that there were standard places where you tip, but it's still something where you have to learn the right way to tip.
Sure.
And there are some things that I still have questions about, Mark, just as an example. I remember when I was a kid, and when I flew on a plane the first time, and, you get to where you're going, and, okay, someone's helping you with your bags. Okay, it was, you tip $1 a bag to the bellhop. Well, if inflation was 20% in the last 2 years, or 3 years, do I have to is it $1.25? And I'm not saying I was a kid 3 years ago, but, how do these things evolve over time that aren't even percentages but fixed dollar amounts? And how do you learn what you're supposed to tip where? What's the index that you should use to track how much you should tip for different jobs, and it just becomes challenging, in my opinion, because you just sit there and you're like, I don't know if this person is expecting a tip just because they turned around, a machine that has a tip, line for it. I don't know if I shouldn't be tipping because they don't actually want it. It just is getting to the point where I think it's confusing for a lot of people. And I think the problem then, as a worker who may rely on tips, is, look, when people get fatigued with tipping, then the actual money that you bring home goes down. And if you're a worker that relies on tips as a big part of your wages, then it makes it harder for employers to actually get, employees in those roles, which means maybe they shouldn't be tipped anyways. This is all very confusing to me, Mark.
Yeah, I'm totally lost. All I can say is we have no transparency. If you rely on rules that employers suggest you follow, they're suspect because they're biased. They want you to tip more so they can pay less. So, of course, they want you to tip our employees generously. Yeah, why? Why don't you charge me less? So there's this opaqueness, this lack of transparency, same thing, that makes me anyway suspicious of people's motives. I don't mean that I think anybody's got sinister motives. I just think employers, like we said, have an incentive to get you to overtip so that they can underpay.
Of course.
So everybody's sort of suspect of everybody else's motives, and everybody, as a consequence, like you said, is confused. I don't know if we need a universal set of rules, and I'm certainly not suggesting the government step in and do something.
Oh, no.
I don't know what, because this is based on culture and norms.
Right.
And
it wasn't a government problem to begin with.
No. Yeah. So when I say rules, I just mean norms, widely accepted practices that we all just kind of agree to follow.
But we don't even have those with anything.
That's broken down, I guess, is my point. I don't know what the norms are anymore. I never really did, so I'm not a good example. But someone like you, more cultured, who actually leaves the house, you probably do. I don't know. Maybe we need a coffee table book that explains it to the rest of us.
I do leave the house, but I'm not sure I would be referred to as normal by a lot of I don't think I should be the standard bearer for normal. I think that'd be a tough putt for a lot of people to swallow. I don't think it would go well. So I don't know what to do on this. And the problem is that there are a lot of people that still work in jobs that are traditionally, tipped as a portion of their wages. And the thing that you worry about on those is, hey, because people are fatigued with being asked for tips, by everyone, when you do go out to eat at a restaurant with a wait staff who comes around to you, are you not tipping that person as well because you're frustrated that you've already been asked for 18 other tips that day, and then that person isn't making the wages that they needed to make?
Right.
It's tough, and I just... We're asking for tips in too many places, and I don't know what I'm supposed to pay people anymore. And honestly, in most jobs, it shouldn't be my problem. Tell me how much it costs for your good or service, and then pay your people appropriately. I'm fine tipping in restaurants. I'm fine, tipping hotel staff to clean rooms. I'm fine doing these things, but I can't keep adding new stuff to the pile because I just don't know what is going. I don't know why I need to tip everyone then, and why is no one tipping me?
I want tips.
What? So what's the deal with the tips?
I'll put a tip jar right next to my producer's board right here.
Does that mean I have to tip you? I got to tip you
every day when you're in the studio? Yeah,
it's true. Otherwise, I get my mic turned off.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I tip Tucker 1 cent a word. It adds up over time. We talk a lot. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we got Stack Roulette after this.
The Financial Exchange Show podcast drops every day on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. You're listening to the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
When you stop working, you stop earning a paycheck, and if you don't have a good sense of what your plans are in retirement, you may be faced with some financial challenges. Hi, this is Chuck Zodda from the Armstrong Advisory Group. In order to retire comfortably without that financial strain, you can either reduce your expenses or find ways to replace your pre-retirement income so that you can determine the kind of retirement lifestyle you can afford. Our new guide this month is called A Day in the Life of a Retiree, and you can get it right now by calling 800-393-4001. In it, we'll walk you through several considerations you'll need to keep in mind as you develop your retirement plan. Get your copy of this brand new guide today by calling 800-393-4001. That's 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Elder life planning can be overwhelming, so make sure you're prepared, or you could make costly mistakes that affect your overall plan. Irrevocable trusts are the most common type of trust that folks use for financial protection, and while they can be complicated to create, they help keep your assets safe because they contain specific protections that many of us need, like the possibility of eliminating your estate taxes. Cushing & Dolan are experts in elder law and taxation, and they can devise a plan that covers you in every area where issues can arise. Their new guide is called Unlocking the Power of Irrevocable Medicaid Trusts. Learn more about how these trusts can benefit your family by calling 866-848-5699 right now. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide right now by visiting LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Every single day, more than 2,000 U.S. companies face a cyber threat or attack. The Boston Red Sox in Fenway Park chose Centripetal as their official cyber network security partner to ensure the protection of their network and ballpark. Intelligence is the answer to protecting your network, and Centripetal is the global leader of intelligence-powered cybersecurity. The choice is yours. Are you going to be another one of those attacked companies? Or are you ready to experience a radical new cybersecurity solution? Find out why the Red Sox chose Centripetal at www.centripetal.ai.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up.
Because we have something better.
Stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit GoRedForWomen.org today to learn more.
Summer in New England is spectacular. Winter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is even better. St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John are 3 of the most incredible islands anywhere in the Caribbean, and their popularity has soared over the past 3 years. If you're ready for your next fabulous vacation, now's the time to check out the American Caribbean. Go to visitusvi.com, where you'll find all the information you need to book a trip that you'll never forget. The St. Croix Crucian Festival runs from December 26th to January 4th. Celebrate New Year's on St. Croix and enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, a wide variety of water sports, and some of the greatest musical acts the islands have to offer. Travel to and from New England is simple, and your stay will be hassle-free because this is the American Caribbean. There's no passport needed and no money to exchange. America's Caribbean paradise is waiting for you. Go to visitusvi.com and make your plans today. That's visitusvi.com. Find daily interviews and full shows of the Financial Exchange on our YouTube page. Like us on YouTube and get caught up on anything and everything you might have missed. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. This year's race is Saturday, November 9th at Fort Independence on Castle Island. And registration's now open. Help us support these great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and registering for this year's race. Your gifts will support a wide variety of initiatives like the DAV Transportation Program, which takes disabled vets to important medical appointments that supply both the physical and mental care they need. For more information or to make a donation, visit dav5k.boston. The DAV5K Boston is presented by Veterans Development Corporation.
Mark, what do you have for Stack Roulette?
Chuck, I'll elaborate real quick here on a point I tried to make in the last segment about more favorable returns occurring, and I'm going to arbitrarily cut off the periods here. Pre-2000 versus post-2000. And I do that because baby boomers had a lot of working years under their belt before 2000, and Gen X has had most of their working tenure under its belt, has gotten most of its working tenure behind it since 2000. Large company stocks, and I'm using a Morningstar index here, but just think of it as the S&P 500. Large company stock returns since 2000 have been about 8%. That's average annual. In the 25 years before, and that's roughly a 25-year period. 25 years before that, they were twice as high, 16%. Now, some of that's inflation, particularly before 1985. Shave off a couple percentage points for that. The difference, if you compound it over a 25-year period, is for every dollar invested, say, in the first period, you ended up with $20 at the end of the period. For every dollar invested in the second period, the one that is consistent with Gen X's, the bulk of Gen X's working years, is $5. So said differently, if you had been working in the 25 years up to 1975, average returns would have been twice as high, and the compound result, now this is growth of $1 at the beginning of the period, so it doesn't capture the effect throughout, was 4 times as high. This makes an enormous difference in terms of ability to generate a wealth that provides for retirement security. That's the point I was trying to make.
I appreciate you bringing that to the table.
Sorry, a little bit too much detail there.
No.
I felt the need to elaborate and put
it's
some
good.
numbers behind it.
Mine isn't nearly as useful. Did you know that in 1943, Mark, the United States banned sliced bread?
No, I didn't know that.
So, first of all, do you know what year sliced bread was invented?
1987.
1928. So we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of sliced bread. I just want to let everyone know it's going to be a big one in 2028. But in 1943, the Secretary of Agriculture, Claude Wickard, banned the pre-slicing of bread in an attempt to help the war effort that was going on. Now, it's unclear exactly why. It's speculated that this was because the steel that was used in bread slicers at the time was a specifically hardened steel that perhaps could be used for military purposes. It's kind of unclear. But they abandoned the bread slicing ban 2 months later simply because they basically said, look, it doesn't actually work. This isn't actually working, and people were getting really upset. In fact, the New York Times, just after this went into effect, published a letter from a distraught housewife, and I quote, "I should like to let you know how important sliced bread is to the morale and saneness of my household. My husband and 4 children are all in a rush during and after breakfast. Without their ready sliced bread, I must do the slicing for toast, 2 pieces for each one, that's 10. And then for their lunches, I must cut by hand at least 20 slices for 2 sandwiches apiece. And afterward, I make my own toast, 22 slices of bread to be cut in a hurry." Imagine a world without sliced bread. That's what we had for 2 months in 1943.
Okay.
That's what I have.
Where did that come from? I'm just curious, that's all. Just your
someone,
brain?
Nope, I saw a meme on Twitter. It was it was a loaf of bread just cut in half with like all the meat in between, and it was like life before sliced bread. And so I was like, oh, when was sliced bread invented? And I started digging around, and this is what I came up with. But the bread slicing machine was invented by Otto Frederick Roeder of Davenport, Iowa.
That could also be why it was banned for a bit.
And
sounds a little Germanish.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Again,
I don't know.
He was probably dead by the time. No, he wasn't. But in any case, sliced bread banned for 2 months in the U.S. in 1943. We're done for the day. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great sandwich on your sliced bread, and we'll see you then.
This Veterans Day weekend, help honor all who have served this country. Join us on